After my last time going around and using the Ardex acrylic markers, I kind of had a pretty mid experience with them. I didn't know if it was just a bad batch I got or if it was just this is the capabilities of the markers, so the company very kindly sent me a second set of these markers that I'm going to be using for this lovely Madoka Magica illustration. So with the last set of markers I had, I noticed that one of them in particular came a little on the drier side, and then on top of that, on pretty minimal use of these markers, I noticed that the tips weren't consistently putting out ink, and especially because they're brush nibs, the very tip of certain markers that I had used more than others wasn't putting out ink at all. So like I said, I wasn't sure if this was something that was just a bad batch of the markers I got, or if it is just they kind of have a shorter lifespan of use. But I wanted to double check with a second set, and like I said, they very kindly offered to send this to me. Downside, I did have to go through the absolute tedious process of putting all these little stickers on. Again, I'm not really sure why they're not just printed onto the body of the marker in terms of the actual color it is, because they're all numbered and then it just comes with these little stickers that you manually put on. It takes a really long time. It was almost like a satisfying little thing to do the first time around, but to have to do this a second time around, it was draining, and I think they should just print the marker number on the barrel of the marker, because I think that would be so much easier, and also these stickers have a chance of just straight up popping off. It comes with two sets of little stickers with the numbers on there. There's the one that was sitting on my desk that I didn't use, which go on the side of the marker. I personally see no point at all putting them on, because I know in my personal use those stickers would just come off on the side, so I just put them on the end of the marker. Onto the actual illustration, I have been inexplicably in such a like brain rot headspace of Madoka Magica. I truly could not even tell you why. I didn't even rewatch the show recently. I guess it's just been kind of like on my mind, and I've been doing a ton of Madoka Magica fan art. I have been like truly in brain rot of it. So that's what we're doing today. Honestly, this video is a little late. I feel like I procrastinated like editing this video and doing my voiceover for several weeks, but recently, very recently, a Lolita dress company came out with a collaboration with Madoka Magica, and they made beautiful dresses for Homura and Madoka. They're absolutely gorgeous, so I wanted to do a piece based off of those dresses and also based off of the photo shoot they did to promote the dresses, because so pretty. I do fully acknowledge that in Madoka's dress, in my illustration, I definitely kind of mixed the original design with the Lolita dress design, especially with the cropping of this image. It kind of got mixed, and I feel like Homura's dress is very obviously different and Madoka's is not, which bugs me a little, but not enough to redo this piece. I was pretty confident that I was going to do this piece digitally, actually. I did a sketch. I really liked how it looked. I did like a finalized line art sketch of this, and then I really wanted to use these markers on this piece and try to push myself, which I was nervous about because there is so much detail I wanted to incorporate on this piece, and I kind of wanted to go a little crazy with the lace details and just like do a ton of details, which I knew I would have to give up with using acrylic markers because I just wouldn't be able to get like super fine lines, which is what I was planning on doing digitally. But I just decided to go for it, and especially since I had the digital file already, I, like, in the back of my mind, had very low expectations for this piece, but I'm actually really happy with how it turned out. I was in the headspace definitely of like, if the traditional side goes bad, I can always just finish this piece digitally, but we didn't have to go that far, which is so nice. Something that was also insanely nice is a lot of times when it comes to sketching a piece digitally and then transferring it to traditional work, what I've done in the past, mainly because a lot of finished pieces I use watercolors for, is I've used a little light box to transfer a printed version of the design over to whatever piece of watercolor paper I want to use, but because I knew I was going to use an opaque medium, I actually just straight up printed the digital file I had onto Bristol paper because I figured that would be a pretty good paper to use of something that would hold up to acrylic acrylic markers, because acrylic markers don't really have a hard time on most kinds of paper. In my general experience, normally as long as your paper is durable enough to get one solid layer of acrylic markers, then you're totally good to just continue layering on top of that. So I wanted to give that a shot, and it worked so well. I think this is just Canon Bristol paper. I don't know what kind. I don't know if they have multiple kinds. I've never used it before. I bought it. I don't even remember why I bought Bristol paper, because I primarily work with watercolors traditionally, but recently I've just been kind of like on a digital art binge, which also contributes to like my lack of posting videos lately, is because I have been doing art and I've been doing a lot of finished pieces that I'm really happy with, but they've all been digital pieces, which traditional will always be my absolute favorite. I will always so strongly adore traditional art, but digital has been something that I've been comfortable with doing, and especially because I just haven't been making a lot of art in like the past year or so, I have been holding on to making digital art because it's what I've had motivation for and it's what I've been enjoying doing. And so much of it has been Madoka Magica art. I am in like a huge brain rot space with that series. As for how these markers worked, I haven't used this second set I received a ton. I've actually only used it for this piece, but even in just doing this piece, I noticed a lot of the same issues I was having the first time around I was also having with this piece, which is so unfortunate because I really want these markers to have a long lifespan. I want to be able to use them a lot without them drying out, and I don't think that is super realistic. I noticed when especially covering large areas, it was very obvious that the ink flow was kind of wearing out after I had used certain markers a lot more than others. I didn't have some of the same issues I had with the last set, which when I received the last set, I did have one that was already pretty dry to start off with, which was a specific color of blue, and I did notice that in a different person's review I saw of these markers, the same blue one was also kind of just like not juicy for them. Didn't have that issue this time around. It was juicy, it was all good, but I did notice that as time went on, as I was using these markers on this piece alone, you could definitely tell that the ink flow to the very tip of that brush nib was not happening, and it's just so unfortunate because like they're such a good price because acrylic markers are so expensive. But with the longevity being a question, I don't think they're super worth it. The set itself, it comes with 60 markers and it is $50. So it's a pretty expensive set. You are getting 60 markers, which is a banger deal because like Poscas, Molotovs, those generally run between like $3 to $10 a marker depending on the nib size. I haven't shopped for acrylic markers in a while, but putting these at like less than $1 per marker is a really good price. I just genuinely don't think that they would hold up for a lot of use or even like moderate use. I think these guys will start drying out pretty quickly, and when you have an art supply that has a brush nib, you want to be able to like fully use that brush nib in every way possible and like be able to use it to the end of the product, and I don't think you'll be able to do it with these markers even if they're stored with the tip facing down. Regardless of that, they just kind of seem to lose a lot of their juiciness pretty quickly, which again, it's so sad. This is such a beautiful selection of colors. It's a really good price point if it worked a little bit better. So I would say, like, I personally don't really recommend these unless you have a bunch of money and you're cool with blowing $50 on an art supply that won't like perform perfectly for a very long time. And like I said, I really haven't used this second set a ton. I only used it for this piece, but I still noticed those issues coming up. I do fully intend on using these markers a lot in the future because they are a blast to work with and I'm very grateful to have them. So as time progresses, I'm sure I'll use these markers more in videos, and when that time comes, I'll give you guys updates on it because I obviously haven't had a marker that has just gone completely dead, so I can't gauge how long it's going to take before that ends up happening. But I just personally don't think that they have the largest lifespan, and especially for an acrylic marker, you want to be able to get a lot of surface area covered with an individual marker. But yeah, I'll give you guys updates on how these perform in the future and how quick it takes for them to completely dry out, because that's also something I'm very curious about. Given it might take a sec, because I honestly haven't been doing, like I said, I haven't been doing a lot of traditional art lately, and I want to, as I literally always say, make more regular videos and stuff like that. I've had so much stuff going on in my personal life, and I've been so exhausted for so long. It's so draining. My partner recently moved in with me, which has been a huge change. I've lived alone for the past, like, year and a half, which definitely has its pros and cons. Cons being it is so freaking expensive. I know everywhere across the US housing is insanely expensive, but where I live, oh my god, apartments are so freaking expensive. Everything is terrible. So financially, I'm so excited, and like there's also like lots of pros to living with someone else, but a lot of my routine has been switched around lately, and it's just been like getting used to having someone in my apartment again, which is very nice in the long run. It's just like that weird adjusting period is something that's taking me some getting used to, especially routine wise. But good god, Aslan is so happy. I think I've mentioned in a video before, but he's been so clingy lately, and like unfortunately really up my ass 24/7, and I love him to pieces. I love him so much, but it's really hard whenever I get overstimulated and I like need to not have a cat be in my face, especially because he gets really clingy and Fiora is really clingy, but not like 24/7. Aslan is definitely clingy 24/7. Fiora is not. But there are certain times where I will have either Aslan or Fiora laying down on me, and the other one is like either sitting on the couch or sitting on the coffee table staring at me, waiting in line to get on my lap. Waiting in line. And I have other cats. Now that like I have my partner's cats with me, we have so many cats. We have 5 cats. But like Beans, for example, my Beans, because my partner also has a cat named Beans. There are 2 cats named Beans in my apartment. It is confusing. I feel bad for them. I feel bad for me. But Mr. Beans, he is not clingy in the slightest. He loves doing his own thing, and if he was my only cat, I would be so sad about it. But because he's not, it is so pleasant for me. He just kind of wants attention when he wants it, which is pretty irregular, but it's also ironic because he is, without fail, always the cat that welcomes me home whenever I come through the door, which feels so special because he kind of just minds his business aside from that. But yeah, my living situation is slightly different now, so like a lot of routine things are changing for me, but for the better, especially because like my partner was living like 40 minutes away, and now having him here is so much nicer because that saves me so much driving time, which was getting so exhausting so quickly. I also have like seen so much roadkill in the time I've been with him just because I've been driving so much more, and it is absolutely terrible. Not a fan at all. It is actually so upsetting to me every time I see roadkill, which like I'm sure that is the same for so many people. I don't know how I got to this tangent. This is what happens. I feel like I am good talking about like the piece, and then once I get to a point where I literally have nothing else to say, I just go off and I branch off into so many different subjects. So that's what we're doing. I know you guys generally don't mind and you love listening to me babble, which I am so appreciative of. As far as the piece goes, in this section you can kind of see I was so struggling to get an even coat of this light pink marker. I know I was going really fast when I was doing swipes, but it was definitely something that I had to do multiple coats of to get an even coat, and I noticed that like even after taking a little break from doing the large pink background, there still wasn't enough ink flow to the actual pen itself. Just doing that background where I did like several layers to get it opaque because I was going super fast with marker. I definitely noticed it used a lot of ink in that marker, so that is just a fun little thing. This piece though is the Patreon print for this month, so if you are interested in snagging this guy, I have it as a 5x7 print. It is only $10 and it ships internationally, so no matter where you live, you can get this lovely little dude in the mail if you're interested. A link will be in the description box below. I'm so happy with how this piece turned out. I was so stressed that it just wasn't going to look good traditionally, And it did, and I'm super happy with it. And it's really nice to, especially after not doing a ton of traditional art recently, to when I finally sit down to do a fully finished piece, I'm really happy with the outcome on it. The markers themselves had such a lovely color scheme to go with this. I'm a huge fan of that like sage green color I used for the leaves. It's such a beautiful color. I do wish there was a bigger selection of more like toned down, not like hyper saturated greens in this set, because a lot of the greens in this set are like neon greens, really saturated greens, and then there's like 2 greens that are like really, really good greens for me because they're desaturated. But thank you guys so much for sticking around and watching this video, and I hope to see you guys in the next one.